Well, 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 happy Monday, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to Act 3 on CHLY 101.7 FM. Once again, we're in the Zoom booth, which means that there is going to be some noise in the background. There may be dogs barking and chimes chiming and doors being knocked on and phones ringing, but don't be marked by that because we got a great show for you. So thanks for tuning in. In the Zoom booth today, we have Alexis Middleton. She is amazing and one of my favorite people on the planet. And the reason she's my favorite person on the planet is because she teaches women and people to be empowered. Hey, my darling, welcome to the program. How are you, Alexis?
Wonderful.
I see
Thank you so
on your
much.
Zoom screen it says Alex and it's Alexis.
Oh,
Like, I know you as Alexis, but do you like Alex?
Alexis is perfect. Thank you.
There we go. How are you, darling?
Fantastic. It's a beautiful Monday. Thank you.
It really is. It's great to be here with you. And I am so glad that Monday gets us closer to Friday. So if you're driving around in your car, let's enjoy the beginning of the week this week. So tell us a little bit about West Coast Woman Power.
West Coast Woman Power. It was founded on the idea that all of us have a story. And some people run a narrative on that story that is not always healthy. And therefore, I decided to share some of the traditional Cherokee and Mayan teachings that I spent about 9 years studying, and sharing that wisdom to help people shift their narrative, to basically rewrite their story in a way that was healthy and empowering for them.
So that's an interesting conversation just from the start, because I think that where people find themselves getting stuck more often than not is the story that they tell themselves. So how do we shift that?
The first thing to recognize is that we actually have a body. And it sounds funny, but I was actually working with an educator yesterday and I was sharing that. And she said, you know, that's amazing. I actually have never acknowledged that I have a body, that I have a physical body. And she said, I've just gone day to day and thought and felt, but didn't acknowledge. So you acknowledge that you have a physical body that you are responsible for. And if we spend too much time and energy trying to numb it or stimulate it so that we don't have to feel those deeper in the closet and the back attic feeling, then what happens is you allow your body to feel the way that it was designed. It's actually quite an amazing machine.
Oh, I agree with you. And I completely can, I can, I feel what it is that you're saying. I mean, I know that sounds strange because we're talking about the body and we're talking about the feel, but there's a detachment that goes on sometimes in people. And I know myself, I have been detached from my body for a very long time. And so coming back into that place where I start to feel the physical side of it and the acknowledgement of legs and arms and body. So what might that look like for our listeners to kind of like, how do you suddenly, if you've not been identifying with your body, how do you suddenly identify with it?
Recognizing where you're feeling pain. So somebody who may have been prone to headaches, those headaches may start to show up when they're under stress. So then they start to look at what kind of stress. Is it a food stress? Is it a family stress? Is it a financial stress? Is it an emotional stress? You start to look at different things that become your trigger. If you're at work and your feet and your hips start to hurt, which quite a few people I work with, that's the case, then we start to look at how are they carrying themselves, not just at work, but when they get home, and are they carrying that same, the way that they stand, that same profile when they're home. So this is about learning ways to stretch the body, to breathe within the body. It's looking at oneself a little bit more uniquely.
I find it interesting when we pay attention to our body, the messages that our bodies begin to tell us. COVID-19 has thrown havoc on all
Yes.
of our bodies. And for many people who are working from home and have this broadcast on in the background of their day, or in
Yes.
their car as they're driving, to grab their groceries or what have you, we've found ourselves more flat on our buttocks than we have probably in a long time.
True.
And so in all fairness, there's different body parts now that are starting to hurt, right? What is that what is it saying to us? What is our body saying to us when our legs and our bum and our waist and our hips are starting to really hurt? Where's that coming from? And what is it trying to teach us?
There's a lot of physical, which can also create emotional confinement. So a lot of us have had to experience a form of isolation that we've never had before in our actual living lifetime, as I've never experienced it in the few years I've been around. And
a week or two, like,
and so what's happened is a lot of my clients, they have there's quite a predominant amount of neck and shoulder tension. There's a lot of the low back. So again, it's acknowledging, is the computer screen at a certain height? Just looking at right out of the gate, what are the ergonomics that you're working with? And then with the COVID, there's a lot of shallow breathing that takes place when we have to be out wearing the masks, and not always a lot of hydration. So these are just the beginning of what people have been dealing with.
And so when we bring it back to the front part of the hour, we started talking about, the narrative that we're telling ourselves and the story. So now we have a new connection. So, I'm wondering whether or not, people are feeling the fear of this being for much longer periods of time. I mean, we hear from Dr. Bonnie Henry daily, and Adrian Dix daily that, that we need to do even more. And so many people are doing even more to remain isolated and to stay in their personal bubbles. But you're right, it does start to affect us mentally, and whatever hits us mentally then of course hits us physically, right?
Yes.
And that body memory, how could we teach the body memory to create a new narrative around that? What could we say to ourselves to help?
That's a beautiful question. And it's something that I work with daily, not just within my own self, but with the majority of women that I work with. There's some men as well. And again, sometimes it's as simple as standing in front of a mirror.
Yeah.
And the first thing one can do is just stand there and close their eyes. And they just become acutely aware of where the pain might be sitting. Okay. So when they're aware of where the pain is, that's just in their body, the moment you create something called awareness, you start to cultivate an awareness within the body. And when you do that, that creates mindfulness. So then they can look in the mirror and they can even just shift. So let's say like it was my shoulder and my eyes are closed and I'm facing the mirror, but my eyes are closed and I'm aware of this, then I might actually just sort of move my shoulder back slightly. And if I'm even aware possibly of how I'm feeling, okay, it could be stress, I'm feeling stressed, I'm feeling isolated, then I can open my eyes as I move my shoulder back and say, I am surrounded with positivity. I feel supported. It's just shifting consciously. You're recreating a body memory, but you're doing it very consciously with your eyes looking in the mirror.
Yeah. And that eye contact also goes back into the brain, and that sort of settles it in, right? I mean, I come from a time, as do you, I believe, in our loveliness, where, there was Shakti Gawains and there were these mindful teachers from way back that would say, don't be afraid to look in the mirror and write positive messages on the mirror so that you can teach yourself how to how to feel better and sort of fake it until you make it, for lack of better words. Positivity and all of that stuff becomes so much. But when we're dealing with so much negativity and we're dealing with so much depression and loneliness and isolation, that narrative is harder for a lot of people, where they kind of look at it and go, well, you know, that's just a bunch of bunk at this point. It doesn't work because I'm not seeing results. You know, what would you say to those naysayers that are out there going, well, you know, that talk to myself, you know, stand in the bloody mirror naked. I will say, as I present that question, I can tell you in myself, my inner self feels very, very different than my outer self does.
Yes.
My inner self is highly energetic, you know, skinny, stunning, right? You know, cover girl kind of fabulousness, right?
Yes.
But because I've been, as our listeners know, I've been unwell for a long time. I've been on medication that has just made me fat, and very, I mean, they don't match, like they just don't match. So I find it difficult to get people to feel better about themselves when they have such a dim view of what they look like on the outside in their own mind. That's that narrative piece, right? That's the story that I tell myself.
It is.
Right.
So there's different ways, and I appreciate what you're saying. There's different ways to look at this. And this is something that in the traditional wisdoms that I was shown when I was in the learning. We didn't arrive here overnight. Our pains and our aches and our physical body did not arrive overnight. And it's an average of about 3 months for every year that somebody has gone through acute suffering. Okay, so whether it's dis-ease and they've had surgery to help recover, it will take an average of about 3 months, 90 days for each year that somebody has had suffering. I had many years of trauma, and it has equaled many years to come to a place of balance. And I still work with the anxiety often, and I apply this. So the first thing that I have actually said to quite a few of my clients that have come to work with me, sometimes we're just talking and sometimes I actually have them on a table. And I have said to them, I've asked, so how is what you're doing working for you?
Yeah, absolutely.
And most of the time, the response is, well, it's not. That's why I'm here. And I say, okay. So sometimes we'll actually go look in the mirror and I'll say, you can have your eyes closed. It's okay. I can leave the room. It's just looking at a different way. This empowerment has to come from within first. And that's the very first thing that comes in all of the Mayan and the Cherokee Foundation is you have to shift what's going on inside first. Everything else can start to recalibrate on the outside.
I agree. It all comes from within. And, you know, we live in a culture where we bury trauma.
Yes.
And our bodies remember trauma over and over and over again, whether or not it's through a muscle ache or through a memory in a dream, or, you know, there are ways that we do that. But along with trauma also comes grief and mourning, and we forget that it's to give ourselves permission. So people figure that if somebody passes away, then they're grieving that passing away. If a pet passes away, you know, we're grieving the pet. We give ourselves permission for all of that. But we don't give ourselves permission to grieve isolation. We don't give ourselves the permission to express and understand the fear that we are experiencing, and from that fear then comes. And so what happens is we're not grieving that those muscle aches, those pieces inside of our bodies start to, you know, manifest it in some pretty nasty ways.
Yes, it's an average of 21 days. So we had to euthanize our lovely cat, and it was a gift to her, but it was actually, it had its trauma.
Yeah.
And so I've given myself quite a few moments up to 21 days to grieve very deeply. And what happens is the body, you don't shirk the grieving. I have my kitten here who's trying to
No, that's
say
great.
hello.
The kid comes across the stage. It's the universsul timing, right? It's the universe coming and saying, I may be gone, but I have not left you.
So
I'm going to
it
manifest it through a different direction at the moment.
it is grieving, or living life is like climbing a mountain, or you don't just, you can start the journey, but start it.
Yes.
If you're going to catch a boat, you don't just sort of stand there and look at the boat. You have to have that step from the land onto the boat. Well, that's kind of the 21 days that you allow your body to have that grieving process. We don't just have little trickles. We want to really allow ourselves to feel, or if somebody's grieving a job loss, or grieving a loved one who's passed, or grieving the ending of a relationship, it's really important to honor yourself with that, because otherwise we start to hold that memory and it becomes a body memory in the body, in the physical body.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
My body memory has just come up here. For the listeners that are here, you know that I have dogs because you hear them in the background. Kevin has decided that her body memory is going to scratch my body memory. Hello, little girl. I know that you probably cannot see this, but there she is. For our beautiful listeners on the radio, you can't hear that, but the other one is over here sleeping already because she's had her goodies. So welcome to mine. I just want to give a shout out here, and with this perfect time for a little bit of station identification. If you have just tuned in, thanks for tuning in. You are listening to Act 3 on CHLY 101.7 in beautiful Nanaimo. What you might not know is not only do we broadcast in Nanaimo, but we go all the way over to the Sunshine Coast, down through Duncan, up to Campbell River. And it's a great station. There's so much that you can listen to on CHLY. And the show Act 3, the one you're listening to right now, is just one of them. On the program today, I have Alexis Middleton. She and I are friends. And even though she is my friend, those who listen to my program know I screw up names all the time. I don't care how long I've known you. I screw you up as soon as I'm behind the camera. It's just the way it goes, right? Behind the microphone. She is with Westcoast Woman Power, I beg your pardon, Westcoast Woman Power. And so what I like for all of our listeners to do at this time of the program is to go grab yourself a piece of paper and a pen, because you're going to want to get her information and reach out and have a conversation with her yourself. She is amazing. Empowerment is a very big word. What does it mean to you?
Empowerment is being able to recognize that I have made mistakes. I have multitudes of dreams that I have aspired to and haven't been able to complete. And that's okay. I'm motivated. I feel empowered to keep moving forward. It's having that belief that no matter what I see in front of me, that's my focus, and I will get there, and I will find the means and the support in order to do it.
I hear you, sister. I absolutely do, because I know that it's true. I think we all, as human beings, we all have dreams, we all have wants, we all have wishes, and frankly, we haven't all won them at where we want to be. Sometimes we have small victories for sure. I've certainly had my share. I know you have too. But it's really the ability, from what you've said, to be connected to that, like to keep moving forward, keep pushing forward, and finding a way to get up when you don't want to, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And that's hard to do sometimes with this COVID stuff, right? I mean, people are just really, I'm noticing that in the summer months, people were starting to go back outside again, and they were taking walks and such, right?
Mm-hmm.
Come the winter time, they celebrated Christmas. It was something to celebrate, but we're really back into our four doors and, our walls and windows.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to take that as an opportunity. I don't know about you, but I like to take it as an opportunity to actually really love my environment, right? To really love my home. And it's not perfect. And in fact, because I haven't been well, and nobody's coming and going, dusting is not my priority. Those kinds of things, they're not my priority. Nobody's coming over to check on whether or not that I have, put the box in the, receptacle instead of leaving it on the counter for a week, right? Like there are things that we do, but I think that we need to be kind to ourselves and that will show up in our body. What do you do to be kind to you?
To be kind with myself, I make sure the first thing I do is to stretch. I stretch in the morning and I stretch as often as I can in the evening. So I always find a limber body has a limber mind. And yes, and I find drinking water, I don't drink enough. I drink other things, so I have to drink water. So,
I hear you, sister.
So I stay healthy
there.
So I find there's been quite a lot of hiking, beach walking, but for those individuals that are unable to do such thing, I have found even just spending moments just breathing in my space, just breathing in what I have around me and having memories of why that was important to me, why I enjoyed whatever that little trinket is, or remembering of why I'm even living in the space that I am. So it's just having those moments of gratitude. And it's not that I have a gratitude journal, it's that I have moments where I feel that gratitude for, it could be for anything that my work, my family, my animals cooperating.
At the moment, my animals are finally cooperating, so I totally hear you.
So grateful.
I know. I'm so grateful when they're behaving themselves because they really are treasure. Last night, I as offline, I'd mentioned that I was shared the evening with someone very close to me for a while. Well, I brought my dogs over to the house when that happened, and as I was going down the stairs, I realized that I didn't have the leash of my favorite they're both my favorite little Jack Russells, and she got off. And she ran and she ran, and she is really hard to catch. So thank goodness that my friend was able to help support me and caught the dog. However, it's usually 5 hours to get her back. Like she's a story in herself. So we got very fortunate that we were able to bring her back. But I have thought to myself, throughout the night and many times when she has gotten out, the freedom that she has, she just goes with every ounce of gumption. And I kind of wish in a way that people were more like their pets, right? That we had this unabashed freedom that, okay, we're off leash, run, like just go, run and have fun and play. So what is it that you do to support yourself during this really, really tough time, as far as self-care is concerned? What kinds of things do you do to sort of help you feel that freedom?
Well, this may be an answer not quite anticipated. I have found that during this COVID time, it's been a combination of extremism. So extreme close proximity and intimacy with family members, and intimacy can also mean into me, you see.
Exactly.
So I have allowed this time to also delve deeply into the things that I didn't want to see or I didn't want others to see. So I have accessed those vulnerabilities. So that's one.
Break that apart a little bit more. What do you mean by you've accessed those vulnerabilities? And only share, of course, what you're comfortable in sharing, right?
Of course.
But
when I'm completely by myself and everybody is out walking or going to work or school, there have been moments where I was not comfortable being completely by myself because I would start to feel old anxieties coming up because I'm used to being a go person. And I wasn't able to, and you can only do so many cleaning of the dust bunnies and reorganizing your shelves and your closet before you have to just look within.
Yeah.
So that's what I would do, is I would use those moments. Okay, everybody's out of the house. You know what? This is a vulnerable moment. I'm going to acknowledge it as a vulnerable moment. And instead of numbing with, it could be with alcohol, or numbing with TV, like whatever somebody considers a numbant. Yeah. Or a stimulant, which could be hardcore exercise or lots of caffeine, like whatever those things are for somebody as a numbant or a stimulant. Mm-hmm. I would actually just do what we call being a human being, not a human doing. And I would focus on anything that I was feeling inside. And sometimes there were tears, but more than anything, it was just an acknowledgement. And one of the things that the elders have often shared over the years was, when you shine the light of day into the darkness, there is no darkness. The darkness is removed. So as I do, this is something that I now have been sharing with a lot of individuals. And it's a very beautiful, and it's a place of strength to come from, to be that vulnerable, even with oneself. So that's some of the ways that I have been strengthening myself and empowering myself through COVID, is to look within. Yes, there's been the walks, but this has been a great part of my mental and emotional health.
Would you say you're healthier now as a result than you were before COVID? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
I, unlike so many people, and so many women specifically, but people in general, I haven't had the downtime to clean my closets and do my shelves and all of that stuff. The work that I have the blessing to be doing, put me in Safe Seniors, Strong Communities, and BC 211 COVID response. So I was at full throttle for months as we were in our highest time. Even though I had the grace and the good fortune of being able to work from home, I have to say that I am so grateful to be in a position in my life where I can work from home in this capacity, and know that I'm doing some, really with the help and the support of everyone. Of course, it's not a Kathy show. It's been pretty impressive to be able to, help a lot of people and support during this tough time. And some of the things that I've noticed is that people are, that many older adults are used to being alone. They found, that they are comfortable in doing puzzles or in, having phone conversations. Quite often they're certainly used to adversity, and have probably experienced more than they care to share in their own lives. And I've always admired the teaching of the elders, because in First Nation community, we would look to the elders for the advice and for the wisdom and for the sage comforts. And yet at this stage, we have abandoned so much of that teaching. Mm-hmm. What would you say the elders have taught you in your journey the most, particularly over this last little while?
I think that's my favorite question.
I'm so glad.
It's been the gift of being able to fearlessly look inward. Yeah. And that to me is truly one of the greatest gifts that I have cultivated from the elders, truly.
Yeah. The elders, I've not had the experience where the elders have actually said those kinds of things to me. And so I'm in awe of community, First Nation communities. Sunamo First Nations recently has been hit very, very hard with COVID. And certainly the way that the community has come together to help support seniors in Sunamo First Nations has been extraordinary. But they've also almost closed themselves off to the outside world. And I think that that's a natural response to tragedy and to come together again. Yes. And so I hope that community will look at even actions of doing, right, is to come together in community as a big and large community to support each other and recognize that if you're in that grocery lineup,
Yes.
the elder in front of you or the older adult in front of you, you might be the only person that has spoken. That
Mhm.
older adult might also be very frightened. I mean,
Yeah.
I recall standing in the grocery lineup just recently, and a woman, was in her mask, and she had her hand forward, like, you are too close. And I'm sure I was 10 feet away, but she
Mhm.
felt, you're too close. So there's a part of a fine line of coming together and pulling away, right? That I think that we need to recognize and know that if we're watching by observation, that
Yes.
there's a learning that is part of that, and that we don't necessarily have to communicate one-on-one, but watch what's happening and learn from it in that way as well.
It's practicing mindfulness,
Yes.
being very mindful, being very aware. And that's so precious what you've just shared regarding the elders in the supermarkets, um, just walking along on the street. And it's practicing courtesy.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I just remember my mother and my grandmothers, right? Both of my grandmothers. One was in Australia. It was always, grandma is in the house, man. She's in the house. And so there was no such thing as ignoring your grandmother when she came over, right? It just was no such thing, right? And my grandmother made, great teachings to me. One of them, bless her heart, she's passed on now, but, for community, this is my favorite giggle about my grandmother. My grandmother taught me that I should never wear beige pants without Spanx. Do you know what I mean, as silly as that was, she
Mhm.
also taught me that loving is a beautiful thing, and that even though we can't hug right now, my grandmother I was never hugged so much as I was hugged by my grandmother. And so I just, think that it's hard not to be able to touch the people that we love right now. But there's other ways. There's virtual hugs,
Yeah.
and there's things that people can do. How have you stayed connected during COVID? You're not an elder,
I
right? You're a wise sage
Yes.
woman, but you're not an elder.
That's right.
You're too
Thank
young,
you so much.
too young,
We
too
can
young, too young.
revisit that in about 50 years.
Where I don't, we're young elders maybe, but we're not there yet. I'm just not, no
So
way.
funny. Thank you. Phone calls, doing the FaceTime, and sometimes even just driving by and waving or talking from the end of a driveway.
Yeah.
And again, it's the random acts of kindness and just taking a moment. This is a time of enormous reflection for people. And it can also be an incredible opportunity to
Absolutely.
come, not only to come deep within ourselves, but to come outside of what we have been used to, which is the internet and the TV and the video games or whatever have you. And just, it's a big world out there. And there's a lot. I refuse to allow COVID to create this little
Yeah.
tiny world for me. I have never felt more expansive.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I feel the same.
Yeah.
But I also want to say that I think that we are so lucky in our lifetime that we can visit our children on Zoom. 10
Yes.
years ago, that couldn't have happened. So COVID
No.
10 years ago, or during the Spanish flu, would have been very, very, very
Yes.
different. So the
Great.
innovations that we have now
Yes.
are phenomenal.
Yeah. There's great strides to avoid even further repercussions.
For sure. What's been your biggest learning curve?
Oh.
I've had a few big ones. So
When I began the podcasts, that was a big learning curve. When
Yeah.
I went to create, it was to navigate the internet. That was my greatest learning curve.
I'm with you, Sugar Plum. You just
Yes.
mentioned something terrific. You talked about podcasts. We haven't broken that open yet. So
Oh,
we're going to go into that. Just before we do, I'm just going to do a quick shout out here. Hey, if you just tuned in, thanks for tuning in. You're listening to Act 3 on CHLY 101.7. My guest, Alexis Middleton, is in the Zoom booth and we're having a blast. So thanks for being with us today. So tell us about your podcasts. How incredible is that?
these podcasts, there's two more coming on. So there's a total of 5 at this time, and 3 are readily available. And what it is, it's offering a different perspective on things like bullying, suffering, just different ways. So everything is done in a story. And sometimes it's my story that I'm sharing with a different narrative. And sometimes it's a story that somebody else has shared. A couple of the podcasts have interviews on them, actually with the youth. And
Marvelous.
yes, so it's offering a different perspective on how to experience or overcome hardship.
I'm so excited to hear them. I can't wait. So we did tell people already to go get a piece of paper and a pen, which is now the perfect segue so that they can find your podcasts. They have their pen and paper handy. Alexis, how do people reach you? How do they hear your podcasts?
Well, the podcast, it's called the Empowerment Podcasts through Westcoast Woman Power. They're on YouTube, iHeartRadio, Spreaker. Oh goodness, there's a few others I don't recall. They're out there.
That's good. Hey, if you're tuning into the YouTube version of today's conversation on CHLY, those links, I'll put at the bottom of those links. That's my learning curve, though. I don't know how to do that yet. But I know that that's coming, but we'll make sure they're up and available for you. Yeah, so people can reach and listen to iHeart or however it is.
Yes.
Out there. How long are the podcasts? About an hour, 15 minutes, 20?
No, they're just usually they enter anywhere from about 15 to about 20 minutes.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good little chunk. First Nations elders often share their pieces of wisdom through story. So is that how you brought the two of them together? Was that your there? Yeah.
You got it.
So smart. Because I have smart people like you around me. How wonderful is that?
Thank you.
Very, very cool. So tell us more about what westcoastwomanpower.com is and does, and what's your affiliation? How did that come to pass?
Oh goodness, I'm going to say about 25, maybe even longer than that, but we'll say approximately 25 years ago. My youngest daughter, my oldest, but my firstborn at the time was born. And I really wanted to create a way for her to see life through a different lens other than just of those around her being influenced. And so I started to work with this and learn different ways to breathe and to stand. And I did some studying. He's since passed away, but there was a gentleman named Patrick Collard, and then of course going through the 9 years of studying with the elders. And this is something where, particularly when I went on the West Coast with one of my daughters about 11 years ago, which was absolutely beautiful. And that's when the name West Coast Woman Power came. That's when I could just start to feel that there was something here that was tenable and that could blossom into something. And really it started in essence for my children, who are young adults now and know everything. And in honor of my mom, who's very much with us, and in honor of my grandmothers.
Wonderful. And
Thank you.
what do you, I hear you identifying with elders. Are you yourself Cree, or what is your, are you
I
First
have, I
Nations?
have, I, I'm, I have a very little bit of Sioux Nation,
Mhm.
but primarily Scottish, with a bit of Welsh and possibly some Irish, but I'm not sure where that is. So
Is that your temperament, maybe? Have you got a little bit of a little bit of a
I'm very feisty.
very feisty? Well, and being feisty is a good thing. That's empowerment. So westcoastwomanpower.com is actually your vision. Is
Yes.
networking involved in that as well?
In what capacity do you mean
Well,
networking?
there's some women's organization, women's training facilities or such. I'm not really sure how to call it, that bring together other speakers and bring together a network of other
That is
women.
something that is unfolding.
Oh,
And I do have several speakers that have agreed to come on board. So down the road, I've done a couple of seminars, and some of them have involved my colleagues.
that's amazing.
Yeah,
And
we're art. It's artistry unfolding.
it's just beautiful. I'm a big fan of art unfolding and things coming together. And especially, like I said, right now, like we've both been talking about, right now more than ever is a time for us to, go after our vision and really make it happen. One of the other visions that we have is that you're one of our newest hosts for Act3 television, which is still coming. We are still a work in progress. If you go back to the tapings on YouTube right now, I've been telling everybody that we're going to be having our first episode since September. So by the time September actually comes next year, maybe we'll actually have it up. But
Well, be on time.
we are definitely moving forward. We are moving forward. We have had some COVID, problems. The biggest learning curve for me has been patience.
Yes.
Like I have found through this COVID thing that patience for me, I've always been a very patient person, but I'm not a very technologically savvy person. So I've had to learn all kinds of things. And I realized just how non-talented I am. And then I find that but I'm excited about that. I'm okay
Yes.
knowing that I don't know how to do something. I'm really comfortable in my skin that way, but I wasn't always. My mom always said to me, you can do anything, right? Anything. So I figured I could build stuff. So I bought myself a hammer and nails. And I really should not be building stuff. My forte is not building physical things, but it's certainly building spiritual things and things of the
Yes.
meditation way. But building actually stuff, yeah, no.
You're very inspiring.
I think we all need to try something new. I think we have to get out of our comfort zone. So as we are just about finished our program for today, I cannot believe we've already gone through just about an hour together. Holy camole. So easy to talk to. So great to be with you. Thanks for coming on the program today.
Thank you.
I ask all of my guests, this is my favorite part of the show, right? Is, if you could imbibe something out for people and share something, a teachable moment, that part that just goes, okay, this will stick. What might that be for you?
You're asking me?
I'm asking you.
Me about it.
Yeah,
What would be offering a teachable moment?
yeah. What do you think is, what would you want to imbibe on community and our listeners and the people that are watching this program?
Practicing mindfulness in your solitude or in your quietude. So instead of jumping up to make a call or read that book or flip through a magazine or put on a show, just spend even 3, 4, 5 minutes just sitting and being mindful. Or when you're outside, just stop moving for a second. Just let your body stop moving and just check out what's going on around you. Just practicing that. That would be my teachable moment.
That's an awesome teachable moment. I'm going to do that as soon as the program is over. I'm going to be sitting for my few moments and taking it all in. Mindfulness, I find, is not always easy for people. People are, like you said, we're so busy, rushing around and, going as quick as a speeding bullet and trying to fulfill our life full of obligations. And so to be in this place where you can just say, no, I'm going to take a moment to feel myself, feel my breath, feel my body. I'm going to take a moment to connect is incredible wisdom. Thank you so much.
You're
Thank
so
you.
welcome.
One
Thank you
more
so much for
time.
having me.
Oh, such a pleasure. One more time before we close out, can you give people how they can reach you?
westcoastwomanpower.com, and you can take a look on the website there, and there's a Gmail.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it West Coast Woman? What's your Gmail address?
That's fantastic. I have to check my website because I am terrible. I'm actually dyslexic.
That's
Just
hilarious.
being honest.
But you know what? I wouldn't worry about it, because at the end of the day, if people go to West Coast Woman, and I just want to be sure that you don't write women, it's WOMAN, woman, as in singular, westcoastwomanpower.com. You can talk to Alexis Middleton yourself. If you go check that out, her website and all of that's going to give you all the information that you need. Thank you for being my guest today, beautiful woman. I am so grateful that you came today. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Tune in next time on CHLY 101.7 FM. Next week, next Monday, same time, same station. You know you want to. Thanks again and have a great day.